Using trig functions to find angles. So steps to finding angles. Step 1, locate the quadrant where the angles lie. Number 2, draw a triangle. Determine the reference angle. Step 3, find the angle and standard position in each quadrant. So find all possible values of theta where 0 is less than or equal to theta, which is less than 2 pi. So if we want the sine of theta to equal negative square root of 3 over 2, we've got to think about sine. So if the sine is negative, that is either quadrant 3 or quadrant 4, because sine corresponds to the y values, and y values are negative down in those two quadrants. And if we have square root of 3 over 2, that tells me it's a 30, 60, 90 degree triangle. So I'm going to draw my triangle. So if this is theta, sine is opposite over the hypotenuse. So negative square root of 3 over 2, and here would be negative 1. Or over here we'd have 1 square root of negative 3 and 2, and here would be theta. So we've got to think about which angle that is. So we know it's a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. Theta is across from the longer of the two sides, the larger. So that means it's the bigger angle, which would be 60 degrees. Theta prime would equal 60 degrees, which is equivalent to pi over 3. And now we've got to put it in the correct quadrants. So to be in quadrant 3, we'd have to go beyond the 180. So 180 plus 60 degrees would be 240 degrees. Or if we're in quadrant 4, so 360 minus the 60 degrees will give us 300 degrees. Or if we do it in terms of radians. So pi over 3 is the reference angle, but if we're in the third quadrant, we'd have to do 4 pi over 3. 3 pi over 3 would be pi. We go pi thirds beyond that. And then over here, we'd be at 5 pi over 3 for our second option in quadrant 4. All right, number 2, we've got tangent of theta equals negative 1. So for tangent to be negative, we have to be in this quadrant. Or down here. Because we know tangent is positive. Oops. In quadrants 1 and 3, and it's negative in quadrants 2 and 4. And if the tangent is negative 1, that tells me we have a 45, 45, 90. So this is going to be pi over 4. This is going to be pi over 4. So we know side lengths there are 1 to 1 square root of 2. So we know we are either in quadrant 2 or quadrant 4 for the tangent to be negative. We know theta prime, our reference angle is pi over 4 or 45 degrees. But to be in quadrant 2, we'd have to take 180 degrees minus 45 degrees and get 135 degrees. Or we'd have to do 360 degrees minus 45 to put it down in quadrant 4. And that's going to give us 315 degrees. Or if we are in terms of radians, we're at 3 pi over 4 or 5 pi over 4. Oh, not 5 pi over 4, sorry, that's quadrant 3. We need 7 pi over 4, so that we're in quadrant 4. We'd have to just be pi fourths away from 8 pi over 4, 2 pi, and pi fourths away from 4 pi over 4, 1 pi. All right, 3, cosine of theta equals 1/2. So for cosine to be positive, let's think about which quadrants we're in. So cosine is like your x, and x values are positive in the first and fourth quadrants. And 1/2 tells me it's a 30, 60, 90 right triangle. And cosine is adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And so if we think about theta, so again, we're either in quadrant 1 or quadrant 4 for the cosine to be positive. And so if this is a 30, 60, 90 right triangle and the cosine is 1/2, that's adjacent over hypotenuse, which means theta is across from the longer side, which is square root of 3, which tells me it's the bigger angle. So it is the 60-degree angle. Or if we are down in quadrant 4, 360 degrees minus the 60 will give us 300 degrees. Or in terms of radians, 60 degrees is pi over 3. And so 2 pi would be 6 pi over 3. So down in quadrant 4, it would be 5 pi over 3. A few more here. All right, so sine of theta. If sine's positive, we are in quadrants 1 or 2. So square root of 2/2 tells me it's a 45, 45, 90. It's the only way we get square root of 2. So we know pi fourths is going to be the reference angle. And since we could be in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2 for the sine to be positive, that means that theta could equal 45 degrees, or 180 minus 45 gives us 135 degrees. Or in terms of radians, pi fourths or 3 pi fourths. Either would give you a positive sine of square root of 2/2. All right, if we want the cosine of theta to be 0, now we know we're on one of our quadrantal angles. We're on one of the axes. And so remember, like over here, you have 1, 0. Up here, you have 0, 1. Over here, -1, 0. Down here, 0, -1. And so if we want cosine to be 0, that's the x value. So that's here on the y-axis. So that corresponds to 90 degrees or 270 degrees. Or in terms of radians, that's pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2. Last example here. So if the cotangent is negative, cotangent's the reciprocal of tangent, and we know tangent is going to be negative in quadrants 2 or 4. So it could be over here. Oops. So cotangent would be adjacent over opposite. Oops, that's not where I need my negative though. Negative there. It's the x that would be negative. So there's our first triangle possibility. The other one is down here in quadrant 4. And so if we ended up at negative square root of 3/3, that tells me that it was really this -1 over the square root of 3, and then we rationalized it. And so that's why I know the adjacent side has to be the 1, and then the opposite side had to be the negative square root of 3 in this case, since we're in quadrant 4. So again, this one could be in quadrant 2 or quadrant 4. And so to have a cotangent that is equal to negative square root of 3 over 3 or negative 1 over square root of 3, theta prime is going to be the angle across from the square root of 3, which is the bigger of the angles in your 30, 60, 90, so it's the 60 degree. So theta prime is 60 degrees, or pi thirds. So then we just have to put that in the right quadrant. So to be over here in quadrant 2, it's 180 minus the angle measure. So theta could be 120 degrees. And in quadrant 4, it's 360 minus your angle measure. So the other one would be 300 degrees. Or in terms of radians, so we're either at 2 pi over 3 or we are at 5 pi over 3. Because 2 pi over 3 is over here, pi thirds away from pi, and 5 pi over 3 would be here, pi thirds away from 2 pi. So again, think about which quadrant you're in, draw your triangle, think about, is it the 45, 45, 90, or is it the 30, 60, 90? Get everything set up and then figure out what your possibilities would be for that angle measure.